Round 3 of the worst of the worst, where I go through all my games to figure out which one is the worst. This time, we get to play some sharks. If you haven't seen this series before, I am pitting 8 contenders against each other to figure out which game I have deserves the title of Disappointing Debris. The first episode, we talked about Fester's Quest, the game that was shredded after an episode of The Angry Video Game Nerd, but it was quickly dethroned by our current champion of Onechanbara Bikini Zombie Slayers. The game that was not only ugly to see, but it quickly became painful to play, so this time I thought it was time to talk about a game based on a film that I absolutely adore. Jaws. The film, in my opinion, and in the opinions of many, is a masterpiece not just of horror creature feature, but of film in general. Based off the book released in 1974, the movie came out just a year later and was the start of the summer blockbuster craze. Though we aren't talking about my love of the film that went on to scare beachgoers away for years. Before we get too far, let's discuss our judging criteria. We have gameplay, presentation, game feel, and finally story. Starting the game is an adult bull shark destroying everything around... Wait. That's not the right game at all. Maneater was a game based off of Jaws Unleashed, which is today's contender to the throne. You play as the great white shark, swimming through the environment, taking on the various missions the game throws your way. You have a health meter and a hunger meter to pay attention to, so make sure to constantly be feeding on the wildlife around you because they have no issue feeding on you. The controls are awkward to say the least. Instead of just pushing forward to swim, you have to hold down the X button. In some ways, the controls remind me of Dark Souls in the way that the attack is actually put to the bumper and shoulder buttons. Trying to attack anything while free roaming is pretty much impossible, so they decided to have the square button to lock onto a target. It's clunky and uncomfortable at first, but after a while you kinda get used to the controls. I'm really not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. The controls aren't the worst thing I've come across in this series alone, but I wouldn't say it's great either. Wow, this game is something. It's not as ugly as I would have expected it to be, since it would most likely consist of blues and browns with some green sprinkled in. The thing is though, once you get past the intro, you are thrust into a SeaWorld-like environment, so there's plenty of color and things to look at. There is a minor problem with that though. It can be hard to see what's hurting you, where your food sources are, and even just being able to see around the bulk of the shark can be hard sometimes. When you're skimming the water, it's impossible to see anything under the water, and even hard to tell what's going on above. The opening menu and the UI is awful. That seems to be a theme with most of the bad games I seem to play. Design-wise, it doesn't look like a horror game at all. Something maybe for a younger teen audience, but not one where you are a shark ripping apart victims. Seriously, when you kill something, there's a large amount of blood in the water, but the title screen, you wouldn't guess how bloody the game actually is. I'm not sure what I have done to make the UI look more appealing. Clearly, everything looks very dated in the game, but that's kind of a product of the time as well. There is the Jaws theme done by John Williams, but there's another notable name in the credits for musical arrangements that, frankly, the music doesn't sound great at all. And that name is Tommy Tallarico. So it seems that not only did he scam people out of money for the Intellivision Amico, but he scammed Applepalooza Games out of a paycheck for more of his subpar work. Moving around in this game is amazing and a lot of fun. Wrong game again. This game feels terrible. Maneater figured it out, but this was way before they were able to get the game to feel better than stabbing wooden skewers under your nails. I'm not sure what was going on, but this is generally unpleasant to play. To be clear, the game isn't causing me physical pain that Onechanbara was, but I really wanted to stop playing after a few minutes, and I have no desire to play this one again. You play as the shark. We've been over this, but how the game sets all this up is kind of bizarre. You start out in the ocean only be quickly restricted by removing the feeling of an open world because you never really were offered that to begin with. You learn that Brody's son Michael is one of the main characters for this game. This takes place 30 years after the first game, and after being in 4 Jaws movies, he must really want to self-delete, and he just keeps living on that stupid island with all the shark issues. We have a company making devices that is supposedly agitating the sharks. At one point, we have to eat a scientist, but before swallowing him, we have to run his corpse by a scanner because he has a key card we need. I wish that was a joke. This type of game you shouldn't take seriously. And it's clear that Maneater went into the cartoony realm, which makes a crazy story and makes it a blast to experience. Jaws is just filler between set pieces. It's dumb, forgettable, and it's fine. It's fine. Like with the whole key card thing, I'm sure many people would just roll their eyes at it. It just kind of made me giggle. Yeah, this game turned out to be a massive nothing burger. It's not fun to play at all, but it didn't make me want to lose my shit while trying to play somehow. Though I mostly wish I could be playing Maneater instead. I've mentioned it plenty of times. Go play Maneater, it's great. Not sponsored. Music was fine. The art was meh. The story is bizarre and goofy as hell, and the overall UI is dated, but not the worst, I guess. It's bad when the best thing I can say about a game is that the spiritual successor was great. But on the same breath, I have to acknowledge that it really isn't all that bad. If I had to put these games in the order from best to worst, it would be Fester's Quest, Jaws, and then Onechanbara. Yes, with that we learned that the big fish in a small pond doesn't manage to stack up against the stacked zombie killers. So far, Onechanbara holds on to the crown for this season's worst of the worst, but will that game hold up to one that, as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one who has played recently? Find out next time on Dragon Ball. Worst of the worst.